Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What's the best way to keep your sanity when researching the paranormal? How often do people approach us who are trying to perpetrate a hoax? If UFO pilots are good enough to travel zillions of light years to get here, how come we're always talking about UFO crashes?
Hello, and welcome to the 831st edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and those high-flying questions came from my co-host, partner in the paranormal adventures, and dad, Paul. And today we bring you one of our coveted open-line shows to answer your questions on many, many paranormal subjects. And we welcome your calls today. The number is 401-766-1240. That's from anywhere. Or email Paul at BehindTheParanormal.com, or you can contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Okay, and joining us once again is our dear friend and favorite guest co-host, Shane Sirois.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so let's plunge right in. Actually, we have a caller already, so welcome to WOON and Behind the Paranormal.
Thank you. How you guys doing today?
Becky, thanks.
This voice sounds vaguely familiar.
No, I don't think so. I'm calling about a sea serpent that was just sighted. Did you guys see that this week?
Yeah, I did. I believe it washed up in South Carolina?
It did, yes.
Okay.
It's been all over the internet. I was talking to a fellow crypto. I'm a paranormal guy, but I do delve into the cryptozoology
yeah, we suspected
a little
that.
bit. How'd you guess?
This is Tom from Methuen, Mass., right?
Yeah, with a bad voice because he's not feeling well. Good
you have a uniquely pleasant voice.
That explains it, Tom. I was like, you sound really familiar, but now it's all coming together.
Okay. Well, I will say one thing. My first impression of that, and this is 6 years in the Coast Guard talking, that anything that's been in the water long enough is going to look very strange.
Right.
Yeah, particularly cetaceans, whales, or certain kinds of sharks, particularly basking sharks, who are essentially harmless unless you look at them after they've been in the water for a while, and then they're really scary.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the other thing it might be, I was talking to a fellow friend of mine, another cryptozoologist author, who's just publishing a book on lake monsters in Florida. Florida monsters. And him and I looked at something. I looked at it again. He looked at it, and he told me where to go look at something again. It actually looks like a bloated eel.
Yeah.
So there's some big eels that, south of Florida, Gulf of Mexico, with all the weird stuff going on. It could have been a bloated eel if you look at the teeth.
Well, if you do some serious tests, particularly DNA and that sort of thing, you can probably come up with some sort of answer. You know what I mean? But I think this only just happened, so I don't know if anybody had the presence of mind to suggest that or what.
Or just go bury the thing and get it out of the way so it don't become a...
Yeah, well, that's happened 1,000 times. Well, keep us posted on that, would you, Tom? And
I will.
While you're here, more or less, tell us what's going on in April.
What's going on in Haverhill? Haverhill's been pretty quiet.
Oh, no, April, the month of April.
April.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
Much as we love Haverhill, Mass. I mean,
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, your April, this is actually history for you, Paul, and anybody listening, especially if you got Phillips lines in your family. January 99 years ago, Howard Philip Lovecraft walked into Haverhill and visited Haverhill. He's been here a lot.
Yeah.
And on April 3rd, there's going to be a talk at the Haverhill Historical Society done by H.P. Lovecraft historian David Goudsworth from Florida. He's flying all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be doing a free talk.
I plan to be there.
He's also going to be at the New England Parafest. Oh, wait a minute. I think you guys are.
That could be, yeah.
It's a possibility, I suppose.
All of us, I think,
Yeah.
So on Friday night, we're going to be over at the Rogers Road at the Kittery Community Center.
Kittery,
Shane,
Maine.
You'll be there that night in Kittery. Yeah, you'll be speaking Friday night. And, Paul, you're on Friday night, I believe, too. I don't have the schedule in front of me. And then Saturday, that goes from 3 to 9. There's some great speakers lined up that night, including another one of your former guests, Stephen Sacalarios. I always he's been on my show. I've always pronounced his name wrong. And then on Saturday, we got a lineup of guests all day long, starting at 10 in the morning and going till 5 at night. And then on Sunday, we're going to be at the Kittery Lions Club, Emerald. And you guys are going to be there, too.
Yeah, we're doing this show from there, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great weekend, and anybody that's interested in anything can go to www.EssexCountyGhostProject.com, and they can get all the information off the website.
Okay, we'll be announcing that at the end of the show anyway, and we'll repeat that website.
All right. So I just wanted to talk about the cryptid, because that was interesting.
It is. They're always interesting, but again, I'm skeptical because I've seen a lot of weird stuff out in the ocean, so...
Oh, yeah, because you lived out there for a few years, didn't you?
Well, in fact, I don't know if I would put it that way, but they like Uncle Fester being lost in the Bermuda Triangle. But
I mean, there are people that just live on in abandoned or old structures from World War II.
Yeah, there are
that are just in the middle of the ocean.
Well, something like that.
Effectively.
Yeah.
There's plenty of those mysteries that you could do a whole show on that. World War II mysterious structures across the world. I think you could spend 7 shows on that. Yeah. Everything that's been hidden in the woods, Mother Nature has taken back. Mother Nature has a weird way of taking back things that we leave behind.
Very true. Shane, do you have any comment on the discussion here?
No. Well, as far as the cryptid or whatever, potential cryptid, I haven't, I didn't hear about it until just now.
Yeah, okay. See, you learn, the show is the font of knowledge for some people, including ourselves.
I'll have to look it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we all have to work together. That's how you find this fountain of knowledge.
That's right.
I guess we're off to North Carolina.
The first thing you got to do before you share something with people like us is look at it real closely and scrutinize it before you share it on your page, because even though the World Wide Web is great for information, some of it isn't really accurate.
Oh, yeah, it's inaccurate. Well, Tom, you are quickly becoming indispensable. So we hope you feel better, and we'll look forward to seeing you in April.
Look forward to seeing you in April. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Tom Spitaleri, everybody. Renaissance man. Okay. So let's move on to our first emailed question, and this is from, appropriately enough, our very faithful listener and questioner in Bogota, Colombia, and it's Peter.
Okie dokie. So, Peter writes to us, the topic of UFO crashes was mentioned several times during the show, and I have a difficult time with that idea. The concept of an alien species that has mastered interstellar or interdimensional travel would demand fantastic piloting skills. They suddenly become the worst pilots imaginable when they enter Earth's atmosphere and crash in great numbers everywhere. It doesn't seem believable to me. What do you think? I'm aware of the idea of some radar technology possibly affecting them in early alleged crashes. Peter.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just start. I've always been somewhat concerned with approaching questions like this, because to apply those standards would, and it could be very, very valid, could be perfectly true, to the issue of piloting a craft assumes that you're piloting a craft, that the UFO in question is not a living thing, because some of the remnants of some that have been supposedly found were more almost biomechanical or biological than just mechanical. And piloting from where? Are they coming across membranes of parallel worlds to get here? Are the membranes crossing them, which means they're not really moving at all? These are all things that have to be considered. But assuming that these are real pilots piloting real craft, which is entirely plausible in some cases, because lots of remnants have been found. We're actually very surprised at how many alleged UFO crashes there have been. Our show last week with Tiago Teixeira from Brazil, just the number of crashes in Brazil was really amazing. So, but if it's really what it appears to be, I would agree that these pilots somehow lose their whatsy when they get to our planet, if that's what it's about. So, Ben, Shane?
Didn't the United States go down and retrieve a couple UFOs
at
from
least
Brazil?
one in Brazil. As a matter of fact,
one for sure. It was very, very incredible.
In fact, Thiago said the deal was that this was way back in, I guess, the late 50s or early 60s. I guess it was either the Alan Shepard or the John Glenn flight. Glenn being the first one to orbit, first American to orbit the Earth. They went down and they said, in exchange for the UFO debris, we'll give you tickets to come to the launch. And apparently the Brazilian officials thought that was fantastic. So, that's a deal. So I don't know. So anyway, but I mean, I don't know. Ben?
Sorry, I was looking up statistics really quickly before I moved forward with this.
Nice.
I'm trying to form this argument in my head as I go, so bear with me. What are the odds that a car will crash? Right? How many cars are on the road right now that we know of, and what are the odds of them crashing?
Well, we're sitting in Rhode Island here, so we talk about cryptids. They're all behind the wheel of cars.
Yeah, it's actually, I just saw something about Rhode Island. It's like the second highest state where you could die in a car accident, apparently, according to the national highway departments. Anyway, so really, it's like the odds of a plane crashing. The only time you ever really hear, bad things about a plane is when they crash. But how many planes are in the sky right now, right?
Oh, thousands and thousands.
Yeah, exactly. So the only time we really hear about UFO crashes, the odds are that there are still craft flying around, right? It's not like every craft enters the atmosphere and then instantly crashes.
Yeah.
That's something to kind of keep in mind. And it's like, I understand the argument that it's like, well, they mastered interstellar travel, but it's like most people can master interstate travel and they still get into car accidents. And, not to compare an extraterrestrial to a terrestrial, but essentially what I'm saying is that the odds are that not every person who drives a car will crash, and not every person, or not every, extraterrestrial that flies a craft, if they are flying the craft, will crash, but it happens.
Yeah.
And the argument I'm trying to make is, statistically, if there are things flying around the atmosphere, there are all sorts of things that mess up human pilots, and say, if our atmosphere is different than, say, whatever atmosphere they're used to, then perhaps turbulence is not something they're used to. Or perhaps, there's weapons testing that we don't know about. I feel like there's a lot of questions that are kind of coming up the more I thought about this, which is, okay, well, assuming that these are, extraterrestrials that are flying the craft, right? That's assumption number one. Assumption number two is that they would be able to fly everywhere at any point in time and have no issues, which is, statistically impossible. I mean, we can guess the trajectory, or be able to estimate the trajectory of, let's say, I don't know, an asteroid field or something like that. And if they're able to navigate that, great, cool. But every planet has a different amount of gravity and different amount of pressure. They have their own sort of atmospheres. Everyone's different. So the odds of them crashing would probably statistically be higher if they've never been to a planet like this before. Now, again, that's assuming that they aren't multiversal, interdimensional creatures, right?
Well, even if they are, they may be dealing with a different atmosphere, and it's just a different way to travel.
Yes, exactly. So,
I guess.
So let's say, you take someone from Rhode Island, and, we're used to the curvy, insanely pothole-filled roads, and then you take them, and then you put them into India and say, all right, kid, drive. Of course you're going to get into a car accident, and then that's just, like a terrestrial example. Now imagine if you were going planet to planet, or solar system to solar system, or dimension to dimension, right? Mm-hmm. Now, perhaps there's unknown knowledge or unknown sciences that kind of can guess, all right, well, we can get that there's going to be a different amount of atmospheric pressure where we go here. We can, calibrate our systems or whatever for that, but in the end, it's ultimately unpredictable, much as, daily life is unpredictable. And in that, I think that, I get the argument, Peter. It makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, if they can master that would mean they'd have to master physics completely and be able to understand not only the physics of where they're from, but also the physics of everywhere else.
Which might be very different if we're dealing with parallel worlds.
Exactly.
Huh.
I got to think, too, that, we see people see UFOs as UFO reports, one here, one there. Every so often you hear a report of people witness a UFO. But my strong opinion is that they're around a lot more than we think, a lot more than we can see. I think there's a lot more of them, and which would also increase the chances of any type of crash. But I think there's a lot more of them. And, you look at the Santilli telescope that can see these weird things around power plants and electrical storms. And then it leads me to think about the UFO sighting that we had in Pennsylvania back in May. Was if we had not had that electrical storm to our south, even though our skies were so crystal clear, would we have been able to see that foggy substance? Did that electrical storm feed into that to give us a visual on that phenomena where that little disc came out of it? Because
that's an amazing point.
Yeah.
Well, then that goes back to the question, which is, what are we dealing with in the first place?
Yes.
Right? Are these craft, which some might be nuts and bolts? Are they, sort of physics anomalies, right? Like what was experienced in Pennsylvania. I got to ask, do you two have any sort of idea at this point in time, almost a year later, do you have any sense that you feel closer to understanding what that was?
I think we all have our own answers to that.
Possibly.
The four of us who were there, and the five of us if you count the homeowner. But I don't know. I'm still wondering about the music that we played and the tones that you played.
Yes.
Because that was the results seemed to have been, if there was any connection, seemed to be rather dramatic. But it struck me that the foggy substance, and if people want to see pictures of this, I suppose they could go to my Facebook page, and I have a still photograph of the object as my cover photo. Also, that there's, if they go back to the video of the May 26th, 2019 show at the WON website here, onworldwide.com, you'll have to do some scrolling, but you can, actually, if you hit, I guess we're rather heavily listened to, so if you look at the most, I drew a blank here, but there you can sort the videos by most viewed as well as most recent. So go to most viewed and just go down there, and it's mostly us. So you can go down there and see the May 26th show from last year, and you'll see the video in the first 15 minutes. But I think that maybe the misty substance might have been an intersect point. If you look at an artist's conception or an astronomer's conception of a white hole, everybody's sort of black holes, and there are also white holes from which stuff is ejected. Nobody knows from where, but presumably from parallel universes, matter and energy. And it looked like that. And then the object, which appeared to be much more solid, came out of that and eventually went back into it. And it could have been, the place is full of intersect points. That's the nature of a flap area. That's why we were there. You've got ghosts going on. You've got the UFOs such as this. And one of the residents had said they had seen a UFO like this previously.
Well, that being said, I think the most telling thing that you said is when you started, which is everyone has different answers for what they saw.
Yeah.
And I think that is more telling than any explanation we can come up with, because we don't know. Mm. And will we know is the question.
Mm. See, I'm right with you on that, and then prior to us all gathering and witnessing this, by the time you were the last one over to the group, within 15 minutes or so, we end up seeing that. But before that, you were witnessing white balls of light around you. Me and Chuck were also witnessing white balls of light, and we didn't know you were. And then I saw a giant one, the size of a vehicle, above the house, and then it disappeared. This was not a reflection. This was a giant ball of light. I mean, it was very, very odd. And then we had that sighting. But what I got to think of is how this thing came up. This light blob that looked like a foggy, misty substance, and it started to morph and take on a different shape, like a peanut. And in the bottom, where it kind of came up into the middle on the bottom, that dark was darker than the night sky.
Yeah.
And that's where that disc came out of. So I think exactly what you just said is that thing, that UFO, the little disc, use that was the process that what we saw, that foggy substance, was a result of whatever was taking place, maybe an opening, some kind of hole, and then this disc came through it into our existence, and then they traveled together, and that disc traveled kind of above it or maybe behind it, and there's some theory that says that UFOs move through our skies by distorting, gravity or space-time in front of it.
Yeah.
And that's what pulls it through. And I mean, if you think of it that way, that's what it kind of could have looked like,
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, but it didn't crash.
Exactly. So I mean,
based on the question we've been answering at length.
Yes.
Fortunately for whoever.
That we know of.
That we know. Yeah. Well, you know what? Just before we leave that point, I think it was either you or Alexander sent up a drone the next day, and it was up. I think it was lower than whatever it was we saw, but it was more or less you'd have the same field of view if you were in the UFO, if it was a craft.
Right.
And I always note that you can see 3 major Bigfoot sighting sites, from that vantage point, including yours and mine.
Yeah, that's true.
And I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, whether it's relevant, I don't know.
Yeah,
so anyway, well, fascinating stuff. Let's go to Facebook here, and we have one from Elisha in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Sure. So we will
That's
start
the top
this.
one there, Ben.
We'll start this very quickly. Alicia, send us a phonetic
Elisha,
spelling just so we know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so continues with, what's the best technique for keeping your sanity and staying grounded when researching the vast amounts of topics and information in the realms of the paranormal? I had to stop because I was taking in so much information that I felt like I was losing my mind, but at the same time, the hunger and desire to learn never leaves. Any response would be appreciated. Thank you.
Who says we're saying?
Yeah. Don't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
That's a simple answer. Shane, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna research it, I mean, I don't know exactly what. Just the paranormals are they talking about?
Seems pretty broad.
Yeah, I mean, the problem. All right, so here's how I'll put it. If that question arises where you feel like it's affecting your sanity, then it's wrong for you. I mean, it's as simple as that. It really takes the right kind of mind frame and emotional stability to do this type of stuff. It really does, because it will affect you. It could become obsessive. You could become obsessive with it, which is unhealthy, and it could get you into trouble. But with those types of emotions, so I would say if you feel like it's been an issue for you, it's probably not the right thing for you.
Ben?
Well, that's fair. Yeah, I can appreciate that.
I've had to help too many people that went through the same type of thing.
Well, I think it's, in any topic, you can kind of become obsessive about it. I mean, people get PhDs, the most random things, because they're obsessed with the topic, right? Or even, whole subcultures have popped up around obsession over a single topic. And, there's something about the paranormal where I think we crave something beyond ourselves, right? Where we want to connect with something that's outside of us. And you find through, the study of looking at the unknown that, you might find something you need, but, there's a certain quality that's kind of missing from, the modern world that we live in, and that's discernment. Discerning what information is necessary and what's not, right? Reading a bunch of creepypastas or ghost stories and stuff is just, it's not worth your time.
Right.
But learning about, I don't know, physics or calculus or, moving past that and looking at, like, theoretical cool stuff that people are actually doing, or learning about astronomy and learning about all sorts of fascinating new areas of study that, are being looked at for the first time ever, really. Or at least since, our ancestors looked at the stars. Stuff like that, I think that's really fruitful. And I think the question you have to ask yourself when you're studying these things is this fruitful or is it not?
Right.
Well, it's funny, the name of HP. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to apologize because I didn't read the question exactly right. So it was, what's the best way to keep your sanity?
And stay grounded.
Yeah, well, when researching the paranormal. So, I mean, for one, like Ben said, don't look towards the creepypastas and these stories that you see on YouTube and stuff like that, because there's so many false ones, and they want ratings, they want the money from all that. But to do the work yourself, the best way I would say is to have a process to identify trends in your work, look for commonalities in the different areas of the paranormal, and let that be your guide instead of these TV shows and these YouTube videos and whatnot. But to have an open mind, but also to have a process to identify certain trends. That way you can connect your own dots, and not go too wild with it and with your internal dialogue. Just you be fact-based, very fact-based, and I think that's a good way to start.
Fair.
Well, why don't we take our bottom of the hour break here. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and today Shane Sirois, Open Lines, on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. We will be right back.
Hi, this is Najee.
And I'm Dave Koz. Hope you'll tune in to the Dave Koz radio show this weekend. Saxophonist Najee is my very special in-studio guest, and we've got a lot to talk about and listen to. Remember to visit davekoz.com for all your questions and answers, and be here this weekend for the Dave Koz radio show featuring Najee.
Hi, fans of smooth jazz. The Dave Koz radio show can only be heard on ON, AM, and FM every Sunday. Twice on Sundays, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. The Dave Koz radio show is brought to you by the Carew Investment Group. It's the Dave Koz radio show, and it's right here on
ON, AM, and FM.
Local and live at 99.5 FM.
And welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM. And our wonderful favorite guest co-host today and colleague and dear friend Shane Sirois is with us for Open Lines. And we've been dealing with the questions. We had a call-in and a couple of other questions. This one is about UFOs, and someone has asked very astutely, how do you keep your sanity when you're dealing with this stuff? And my answer is simply don't do it in the first place. I think that one of the reasons I cannot stand most of these ghost shows and reality shows is because it just attracts people to adopt the thing as a hobby, as if they were bird watching, and it is extremely reckless and dangerous thing to do.
She's asking about doing like ghost hunting and stuff. It's just researching the vast amounts of topics in research.
Okay. All right. Well, taking the question strictly from Elisha here, which that's a male name, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Elisha.
Like from the Old Testament.
I've just seen it pronounced different ways, so I have no idea.
Oh, yeah, but there are.
I apologize.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm right. But anyway,
I'm right. I don't know.
Anyway, regardless of all the gender stuff, it's a good question, and yeah, I mean, I think Shane is right. I mean, keep your feet on the. Ed Warren of all people used to say you have to keep your sense of humor. In this, because we discussed the very question, 100 years ago when I was working with them, and I think that's a good point. You keep your sense of humor. You try to keep your feet on the ground, and think of the good things. Keep it positive, and that's good for anybody to do, especially if you're going to be involved in this. And just as a side note, before we move on, it's one thing to go seek the paranormal. All right, it's another thing if it comes and gets you. A lot of people are, totally different focus, and, the stuff will start flying around the house or something like that. And because, there are ways to approach that. But, if it does happen to you, if you grow up in a quote-unquote haunted house, that's certainly not your fault. Although you could be feeding something, but that we've done lots of shows on that. So, whether it comes to you, you go to it. If you can't avoid it, avoid it. All right, so that's my 2 cents. All right, so what do we got
next?
Number 2 from Facebook there, Ben.
So number 2 from Facebook, we have Paul from Northbridge, Massachusetts. And this question is for all three of you individually, he says. In all of your experiences, can you each describe to me an encounter with a person who was very obviously just seeking attention or just making things up? I bet you've come across a great deal of people like this, and I would love to hear some of your ridiculous encounters if you have experienced them. Thank you, big fan of the show, and them Enos.
Well, that's a great question. All right. Well, yeah, since I suppose I go back the longest. cases like that turned out to be, I think, hoaxes or publicity stunts were very rare. Or I didn't actually run into any in the first 20 years of this, starting in 1970. People didn't want to talk about these things very often. Very few people were out there researching this. There was the Warrens, Hans Holzer. There was, of course,
Dr. Weiser Ryan.
Yeah, well, from the scientific point of view, there was Dr. Weiser Ryan and J.B. Ryan, and there was Richard Sennett, I believe, it was coming up, and of course a couple of others, and then me, who just starting out. But people were frightened when you did find out about this, and they usually would call you when things had gotten extremely bad, right? More recently, I look for people who, when it started becoming popular, like TV shows and all, you'd find the people who would come to you who were frightened, I trusted more than the people who were excited. Okay? I'm thinking of a case in Maine Ben and I had, where lovely people, loved them to death, and it was a legitimate case, but I think they were looking for a TV show or a book deal. All right? They were excited about it, you know. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a real case, because we did run into some real interesting things there. There was another case in Rhode Island, lovely woman, lovely family, but she was convinced that, you know, the pareidolia was taking over. She was convinced that there was, you know, the sheets would be piled a certain way, and she'd see a face in it, and all of a sudden there was this big haunting, and there'd be a lot of strange things on the outside security camera that were obviously, you know, the sun going down and the reflections in this, and the lens flare and things of that kind. And she just wouldn't take no for an answer. But I don't think but those weren't deliberate hoaxes. There have been the occasional email or call from someone, and you could really sniff that it was just something that was not right, okay, and I just wouldn't touch it. But there's a difference between making a mistake and creating a hoax. So I haven't run into a lot of people deliberately trying to hoax us, although there was one, this goes way back, I don't even know if you were born yet, Ben, it was in the 80s. I was on a TV show that was about Elvis Presley, of all people, right? It was, remember, it came out on VHS. That's how far back this goes.
Oh, wow.
And I went down to, they came to Warwick, Rhode Island. I went down, and they had a bunch of quote-unquote paranormal experts come in and look at this video. And it was a video of Elvis's grave. And you could see this flickering. It's you know, it was polished stone, so it was reflective, and you can see this flickering. And apparently I was the only quote-unquote ghost hunter who asked the question, is there like an eternal flame kind of thing that says, and they said, yes, you're the only one who picked out that was what that was. Okay? So they were deliberately trying to, I guess, trap me on television about this thing. You never knew that, did you?
No, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's so far back.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and they paid me $40. So, you know.
It was like a contest? Did you win the $40?
No. It was a TV production. It was just a stipend for coming down and being on the show. But everybody else said it was a ghost. So.
Well, hey, good for you.
Well, a long time ago. Anyway, so Shane, what say you?
I don't think nobody's ever tried to deliberately hoax me, but there was one case that you started off with you. You handed it off to me, Paul. And I'll leave out some details because I don't want to.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. So there was the one in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah.
The lady.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was looking for some type of attention.
I apologize for that.
And also,
I went up there first, and she was convinced she was possessed, and I'm trying different languages, which is one of the tricks I use, and she didn't know what I was talking about. You know?
Yeah.
So, anyway, so go ahead.
So she was a type of psychologist that she worked in prisons, mostly for working with inmates who had like a sexual crime. You know, they were sex offenders of some sort. That's basically who she mostly worked with. So what did this genius do? She ends up getting into a relationship with one of the inmates.
Oh, brother. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Whoa.
So she gets fired from her job because of it. She got, her license or whatever, her license to practice revoked. She tried to get it back, and but anyways, this guy gets out of prison. She moves him into her house. She finds an altar, like a satanic altar, in the basement, and she goes crazy thinking, this guy. But at the same time, he was becoming abusive towards her, both mentally, physically and sexually abusive towards her. She said she started seeing certain things, and in the house, shadows, feelings of being watched, bad headaches, things like that. So, but there was evidence of there was holes in walls everywhere. I mean, you could tell she herself was writing on her bedroom walls, "I'm a good mommy."
Yeah, I remember that.
Really bizarre things. And so I think she needed help herself, and her whole life was spiraling, basically.
Yeah, so, it just sounds like she was having a mental break.
Yes, she absolutely was, and she was blaming everything on Satan, because this guy was a Satan worshiper, she said, and because she kicked him out of the house after she found the altar, because he had been abusive anyways, kicked him out of the house, and now she started to associate every little thing with the fact that he put a curse on her, and Satan's coming to get her, and so the fact that she was losing her house was because of the curse. The fact that her children were being taken from her was because of Satan. It wasn't because the cops found them doing crazy drugs in the garage in the house unsupervised. It had nothing to do with that. It was the boyfriend who put a satanic curse on her. Every time she saw like a hawk, she said it was being sent by Satan. It was trying to warn her that she's going to die and all this stuff. So. She also was associating these headaches with this curse, where she would only get the headaches at night, and she had uninsulated wiring. Actually, no, it was ground looping coming in from her ground rod that was charging her plumbing with a high EMF right below her head where she slept at night. That's what was causing her headaches, not Satan, not this curse. But so my point is so she was using that as a way to take off her own responsibility for her screwing her whole life up. She lost her job.
Very common.
She lost her house. And I think she was taken to jail. I think she got in trouble, and herself was arrested too. But, So we see that a lot. But that was a case that I'd like to bring up right now, because it was one that you're familiar with too.
Yeah.
So, but those types of things, that passing the buck, so they'll say that there's this evil entity messing up their lives, but it's them, and they want us to like back them on that story, and it's like there's nothing here.
Yeah.
It's so you gotta be good at sniffing that out.
Yeah.
But if you can too, try to steer them in the right direction in their personal life too. Everyone has problems, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, comes down to the person, not the phenomena itself. Or phenomenon, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Have to get that distinction
get
down.
our Greek down. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Any hoodles. I guess, for me, the first thing that came to mind was our case from Maine about 10, 12-ish years ago. And nicest people in the world, really, really, really nice, but they didn't want us to help them. They just wanted, again, validation for the phenomenon. Just say, oh yeah, we've got something going on, and they encouraged it. And it was a case that was technically a vacation spot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like a vacation spot. You take your RVs up there, and this family ran this RV park, and they had problems with a parasite that was there. And they called us and like, hey, come up, take a look at this, whatever. And so we went up and we took a look, and
several times
actually. And it was they didn't really show any interest in us helping them. They had no interest in what we were saying, no interest in any of our theories. They just were like, oh yeah, well, it's a poltergeist, and it's like, oh well, yeah, yes, but you can do something about this. And like, oh no, it's been following us for years, and it made me very uncomfortable how the man of the house, so to speak, was just, he was very enthusiastic about it, and that was like that made me very uncomfortable the whole time we were there, because everyone else was just kind of like, yeah, kind of going along with it.
And there was a young girl who was living
Yeah.
with them too. So
And it was very, it was a rough situation, and it was like, you know, have some self-awareness, man. Like, obviously everyone else here is uncomfortable. And you're just kind of doing whatever you want and just saying, yeah, you know, we just want to be famous, really. And, like, you know, I don't know if they expected us to bring up film crews or what they wanted out of the
Well,
whole
we were on
experience.
the air already at that
Yes.
point, so they knew about that. I bet that's where they heard of us. But
Yeah, and it was like, well, I don't know. I'd like to think that we sort of got the notion that, okay, well, you know, we've been up here like 3 or 4 times, and it's like, okay, well, there's not really not much we can do for you. But the thing that just made me so not angry is not the right word. I guess uncomfortable or unsettled is they ended up moving, and they're still in touch with us, I believe.
Not lately, but we stayed in touch for a long time. They moved to a different part of the country.
We're leaving names out of it, and it's, you know, they're lovely people, but you know, the phenomenon followed them, and it followed them throughout the country.
It followed them from another part of Maine by the time we got there too.
Exactly, and at that point, it's like, okay, well, we know that we're not dealing with something that's just kind of been there, and they just happen to have all the ducks lined up. It was just, you know, you're encouraging it by A, giving it attention, and B, you know, not, you know, doing the things that you should be doing, right? You know, there's that old saying of, you know, if you want help yourself. Like, you know, get yourself together, and then everything else will kind of fall in line. And, you know, it was kind of what we were trying to explain to him, and he just wasn't getting it. You know, it was just in one ear out the other. And, you know, maybe it's one of those things where it's not that you don't want to listen, it's that you can't listen. And if you learn how to listen, and if you really do and truly want to rid yourself of this parasite, then, you know, you have to take the steps. You have to move in the direction.
Well, that whole case reminded me of what Shane says, which is it's people who are haunted, not places.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of the parasites, the negative hauntings, that's exactly what almost 100% of the time that it's not haunting the home, it's haunting the people, because it's feeding off that emotional energy.
Yeah.
And by encouraging it, you know, you're feeding the parasite.
Attention is huge.
Exactly.
That's usually where it starts.
Exactly.
Well, we have a very long and thoughtful question from Doug in Texas, but I don't think we have time for it. We'll bump into the next show. We have any short ones there, Ben?
We do, and it's from Mark in Thermopolis, Wyoming.
Thermopolis, Wyoming.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, oh, all right, cool. So Mark writes to us, do you think that dreams are views into alternate worlds?
Okay, well, we've talked about that a few times, but I think yes. And I've mentioned this, I apologize for repeating myself if people remember, but when I worked for the Providence Journal, I was an editor there for some years, and I would have a very broken sleep schedule. I would be working till, you know, on the morning paper until about 1 or 2 in the morning, and then the newsroom would clear out. I'd come home, but I'd be up at 7 to get you boys out to the school bus. You know.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And because Mom worked 9 to 5 and had to get her sleep in the morning. So I ended up sort of taking a nap in the afternoon to kind of make up for it before I went to work at the Journal. So I had broken sleep, and I found that I remembered a lot more dreams than I would have with a normal sleep pattern just at night. And I would write them down, and I have like a 25-year dream record. And if I look at those, I can go back as far as you want, and it'll immediately come back to me like a memory. You know, people forget their dreams very often, or some people say they don't dream at all. They do, but they just don't remember. So I have found that there have been, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm bonkers or something, but you find out that there are repeated visits to certain places, certain people, and for example, Ben's mom and I will visit this one cafe on a street corner in Pennsylvania, to which a state I very seldom visited until the Pennsylvania Triangle case, where we got the UFO started in 2016. with you and I, Shane, going down, and then Ben too later on. And there are whole life memories. Most dreams are lucid now, and I will have say, oh yeah, this happened like last week here or something. And it's like the whole memory. I'll remember people from childhoods that I never technically had. So yeah, I think that a lot of dreams, if not most, are, a look into parallel lives, parallel worlds. I think. Now the question is, wouldn't there be, if our theories are, wouldn't there be dreams that look into the future? And I have those too. Mm-hmm. What to us would be the future? And of course we talk about Einstein all the time, and relativity, really indicating that time is all simultaneous. And researchers into time travel saying you don't move back and forth in time, you move sideways.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I apparently, for a very long time, misunderstood the idea of deja vu, which I guess is like, oh, well, I feel like I've been in this situation before. I've had dreams about things, and then they happen. It could be 6 months down the line, it could be years down the line. And then I remember it at that moment. I'm like, oh, I dreamed about this moment. But then for whatever reason, it's like, I recall from the dream that like multiple other things kind of happen simultaneously as that happens. For example, the other day I was making Marion a cup of coffee in the morning, and she prefers iced coffee. So therefore, I must get the ice out of the freezer. So I got the ice out of the freezer, and I put it down, and I had this moment where I was like, I remember this exact moment from a dream, but during that dream, something else happened where it was like 3 or 4 different things kind of happening simultaneously.
Alternate, yeah.
Yeah, where at one moment I could be doing this, and another moment I could be doing that, another moment I could be doing this, and it's all happening at the same time, and I'm just like, oh, well, that's weird. And then I remember at that time, that dream that I was having, I was actually very sick, and I remember being sick, and then it feels like I'm sick. It's very
yeah.
It's apparently that's not supposed to be deja vu. I learned, and the idea of dreams sort of presenting an alternate reality is interesting, right? Why do we have some dreams that are seemingly prophetic? Why do we have dreams that are seemingly, sort of reflections of our daily life? And why is it that we have dreams that seem to sort of reflect our mental or emotional state at the same time? And I think it's interesting because it shows that it's sort of a whole experience, right? That it's like, it's not just, my consciousness projected into a different reality in a different plane. It's a whole thing, right? How you're feeling, how you're doing mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever. It all plays into this whole experience of understanding, what reality are you in? And then it begs the question, what is reality? And if reality is indeed what we make it, wouldn't our mental and physical and emotional states have something to do with the realities that we're in? And hence why, because I really thought about this when we had that show the other week on dreams, and it's like, well, everything's a symbol. And it's like, well, I mean, if that's true, then in daily life everything's a symbol. This empty cup of coffee here is a symbol of me drinking all of the coffee and still not being awake. Being on the radio is a symbol of voice going over the airwaves, and maybe these words that people are hearing, which is really a very strange concept if you think about it, that disembodied voices are talking to you about the paranormal in your car, and you stop and you think about it, and you're like, wow, this really is a symbol of something that might be going on in my mind right now, but really it's happening physically in front of you because of distribution of air molecules and whatnot. That being said, taking it back, dreams is sort of being a reflection of not just the reality that we wake up into, but an unwaking reality, right? Wherever that might be in the multiverse. And it's realizing that unwaking reality that we really realize that we exist.
Shane?
Nice. Well, I ain't gonna top that, but that was good.
It was.
But no, I agree with you both, and but yeah, I have those same dreams that there's got to be more to it than just something going on in my head. I mean, there's substance, and then a lot of my dreams too. I do dream of things that are to happen, and I mean, I've dreamt about friends dying when I was younger and never said anything, and then they died, and and so now I say something every time.
I remember that with you, yeah.
Yeah, so. So I agree with both of you, and but on another note, on another side of that topic, if I could only have in this existence, this parallel, the dream where I can fly. Because I fly all the time.
Oh, yeah, me too, yeah.
I want to fly.
Well, who does? There you go.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we're just about out of time, but we'll have to fly into our announcements at this point.
Well, that's a good, nice transition there.
Yeah, I see what I did there.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so
we had a great time yesterday at the 5th Annual Book Lovers and Authors Expo at the Cumberland Public Library here in Rhode Island. It was great to meet the listeners who stopped by, and many thanks to Aaron Kutu and the great staff at the library. It's always a lovely time going there.
It is very well organized. It's a pleasure. Thanks also to the folks at Dave's Market who donated all sorts of great goodies and refreshments to that event.
And on April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we'll be at the New England Parafest in Kittery, Maine. The first 2 days of the event, Friday and Saturday, will be at the Community Center at 120 Rogers Road, obviously in Kittery, Maine. For Sunday on the 5th, we will move to the Lions Club at 117 State Road for the rest of the event, which will include a live broadcast of the show between noon and 1 p.m. All proceeds from this event will go to help support the historic Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and toward the upkeep of veterans' grave sites there.
Along with ourselves, speakers, almost all of whom you've heard on the show at one point or another, will include our own swashbuckling colleague, Shane Sirois. Do you know what you're going to be speaking about?
Strange disappearances.
Oh, that sounds great.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, don't disappear before you give the talk. But, right. Bill Brock of the Discovery Channel's Monsters Underground, ancient sites expert Dennis Stone, Bigfoot hunter Dave McCulloch, reincarnation researcher Stephen Sakalarius, researcher and broadcaster Tim Weisberg, now the host of the hit nighttime show Midnight in the Desert, and many more. Order tickets, as our first caller said today, at EssexCountyGhostProject.org.
And naturally, we'll be back at the Exeter UFO Festival on Labor Day weekend, September 5th and 6th, as speakers, and to do our 5th annual live broadcast from the historic Exeter Town Hall on Sunday the 6th at noon. And the event is sponsored by the Exeter Area Kiwanis Club to raise funds for local children's charities.
And we should say that we are planning another trip to Pennsylvania in May. We're not sure which weekend yet, but there will be our annual neighborhood meeting for the folks in that area, which is always a hopping because everybody is an experiencer down there in that area. So stay tuned for more events on that. Okay, I guess we should jump probably to Ben. What do we have coming up for next week?
So next week, Sunday, February 23rd, it will be Open Lines, and with the special guest co-host. Wait, 23rd again? Is
what?
it the 23rd next week?
Yeah.
Really? Wow, geez.
Time flies and you're having fun, Ben.
And I'm looking at the math. I'm like doing the math in my head, and I'm like, oh,
today's the
16th. Well, we'll have Shane back here in his seat to help us handle the stack of emails from listeners on many.
But the date is right, but the thing is wrong.
Well, Shane, are you going to be back?
You're welcome anytime. We have. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is embarrassing. I can't remember who we have next week. It's going to be another great guest. Ben will look it up.
I'll look it up very quickly.
In the meantime, Shane, what's cooking with you? TrueGhost.com, huh?
Yeah, TrueGhost.com, the website, and all my contact info's there. But yeah, I got not a whole lot going on. I got some investigation scheduled. I got to get out to help those people. So if they're listening, I will see you soon. And then of course the conference there in Maine in April.
Absolutely, yeah.
We have Philip Mantle on with Alien Autopsies.
Alien Autopsies, he's taking another look at that, and that should be very interesting.
Great Philip Mantle.
Philip Mantle from England. That'll be terrific. Okay, so we leave you this afternoon with a beautiful and uplifting thought from one of my favorite people, the 13th century Persian poet and theologian Rumi. Everything in the universe is a picture brimming with wisdom and beauty. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno.
And I'm Shane Sirois. Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.